Welcome to the Experience Comcast. I'm your host, Brigett, and I have my friend Brian here with me today. So, welcome onto the show, Ryan. I'm so glad that
Yes,
you're here. Go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit more about your background and all the things that you've been up to lately.
yes. Well, thank you, Bridget. This is very nice to join and connect and be together. So, I have a long-term experience, for example, in fitness coaching and training, as well as in clinical healthcare. And just something that I started to develop and see was how through my health, wellness, and fitness coaching is a very helpful way to start being able to support people directly so that through that we can start bringing in, for example, whatever a healthcare provider has requested or suggested, and then also too whatever somebody would like to start doing for themselves to start reaching and achieving a healthy lifestyle goal.
Awesome. So you're really that person that comes in, and I kind of feel like, as a coach, we're along the same lines, but really helping kind of partner with their healthcare practitioner and really helping them like know what to do to achieve those goals or those things that they've been told they want to do or need to do, and maybe even like you said, those things that they want to do themselves. You're kind of there beside them to be like, okay, this is how we're going to do it. Like I'm here with you the whole way, right?
Right. Yeah. So, for example, maybe somebody who's experiencing what's referred to as pre-diabetes. So, the work I do is through the CDC, which is Centers for Disease Control.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, they created a pre-diabetes program and, just things that we can work through when I'm working with someone to help then to reach and achieve, for example, being able to bring down blood sugar levels.
And I'm glad that you mentioned that because that is the pre-diabetes. That's really what you're going to talk about here today, because that is something that is so common, unfortunately, in our world today for someone to be diagnosed. Either if they have not, I feel like every one of our listeners probably knows someone, a family or a friend who is probably been diagnosed with that pre-diabetes or maybe even told that's kind of the direction that they're heading. And so I know that that does bring a lot of stress on people when they hear that, because it really is a lifestyle change that they are facing. And so a lot of stress there. And like you said, it's something that what you do as a coach, what we do as a coach, the CDC has a program and has some guidelines that we're not pulling stuff out of thin air here, but we're following some already proven scientific methods of things that will actually help them. So go ahead and share a little bit more about that, as far as what are some of those things that you've seen people, as far as the stress when they have been given that diagnosis, when you're working with these clients. Tell us kind of some of those things that they start exhibiting, those stressful behaviors they're exhibiting, some of those things that they start telling you that they're facing.
Yes. Well, thank you. Yeah, that is a helpful, something to share. And stressors do arise and occur. And, for example, some people have a family member who has, for example, is experiencing, say, type 2 diabetes.
Hmm.
And so somebody then who has received the diagnosis or information of having pre-diabetes, they then know where pre-diabetes can go, for
Right.
example, into type 2.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then also knowing what else occurs to the body and the system and so on. And so, yeah, I do see those stressors that arise. And just through my coaching skills and also experience, for example, in stress management. Then what we start to work on is seeing, for example, a couple things. It can be to start just tracking the amount of movement that's done
Mm,
per
yeah,
day or week, and then also tracking food. So just, when tracking food, then being able to see how much protein there is, the
right.
amount of carbohydrates, the amount of fats. And so that's just a more helpful way just to kind of start seeing one's overall view
Yeah.
of how things are.
Yeah. So, and that's such a helpful tool when we really start tracking a lot of our activities, whether it be food or movement, just so we can really see what we're doing. But do you feel like that, although you know that helps people, do you feel like that stresses people out in the beginning when you're talking to them about starting to track some of those things? Or are most people kind of, okay, yes, like let's do this? Tell me the response that you typically get from people.
Yes. Well, that's a very helpful question because just from person to person, it can vary a little bit. And some people do know, for example, being able to track food. There are different ways to do it. So there are some apps, for example, you can just enter in foods. Sometimes that's a little faster. It's
Yeah.
also possible to share just a picture with me as I can see a plate, for example, know what somebody is eating. We can discuss it a little bit. And then different from an older method, which still some people do, which is then to weigh each food item. That can take a lot of extra time.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's probably the most intensive way of tracking, right?
Yeah, it gives, quite a bit of data to the food,
Right.
although it's like, well, how much time do I want to spend weighing food, making food, eating food, and then doing dishes? That could be
Yeah,
a very
yeah,
full day.
definitely add that. You gotta consider cleaning up too, right? Yeah, and you're right though. Some people probably when they hear tracking their food, they automatically probably go to that extreme. But you're right, and I'm really glad that you shared that it could just be entering food in an app, or it could even be taking a picture, because there are a lot of different ways that you can track depending on your personality, your lifestyle. So there's different ways that people can do it, that really will fit their lifestyle and that still gives them that feedback that they need to move forward.
Yes. Yeah, so there's parts of stress management and then also too seeing what is possible. For example, if I have prediabetes, what can I add into my
Mhm.
lifestyle to help support me and keep me from going to type 2 diabetes?
Yeah, so what can I add in? I really really love that because so many times we focus on the negative, like, oh, I can't have this anymore. I can't have this. It seems like that's once people get that pre-diabetes, or especially that diabetes diagnosis, it's like immediately all the things I can't have or do anymore. And I love the way you word that of like, what can I add in that is going to help me move toward my goal and that's going to help me move toward what I want it to be, what I want my health to be. So that is a great way of looking at it. So do you feel like that just wording it that way and helping people see that really kind of puts a new perspective on it for them? Does that really help them out?
Yes, that does. And, with my time understanding and appreciation of what is referred to as cultural competence.
Yeah.
And yeah, so this can also be referred to as diversity, equity, inclusion, and acceptance.
Yeah.
So, what I also see and do and accept with all people, for example, I create a judgment free space for us to be able to connect, communicate, be together, in a trustworthy space to be able to share openly with one another, seeing all people as being autonomous through adding something helps then just start seeing what's working well, what to stay with. And sometimes that just shifts some other things without, for example, just telling somebody that, this comes up, for example, with something that's referred to as cutting carbs.
Yeah.
Yeah, so not eating carbohydrates. And then if doing that, for example, well, I guess I'm not allowed to eat my ethical, traditional foods.
Yeah. And, that is something that I'm really glad you brought up because I feel like a lot of programs, a lot of, I don't know, I don't want to just lump doctors into one big basket, but I'll say a lot of programs really don't look at that cultural aspect of where people have grown up. And I mean, food is huge to people, and food and culture, their heritage, it really is tied so closely together. And to tell someone that you can't eat carbs, which might, for, a healthcare practitioner, that might mean we're just going to eliminate a lot of simple processed carbs, a lot of processed foods. But someone else hearing that, they may translate that into, like you said, I can't eat my traditional heritage foods anymore. And that's not necessarily the case at all. It's learning how to continue to do that, but in a way that is healthy. What are those foods that are still healthy, that are part of your heritage that you can hold on to? What are those healthy foods of your heritage that, like you said, that we can add in? And how does that translate? So it really is that communication of, we're not trying to make you forget your heritage and give up all the foods that you've grown up with. But what are some things that are healthy that we can add in? Maybe the foods that you did grow up with that are healthy. So, yeah, so that is really, I feel like that is huge and a great perspective to remind people when you're working with them in that. So, yeah, so I feel like all of these things are definitely probably some things that bring about stress when people maybe get that pre-diabetes diagnosis, and they kind of know what they're headed into if they don't change. But then all of these things of, I have to track my food, and what is that going to look like, and I can't eat all these foods anymore that I want to, or I have to now go to the gym 5 days a week and work out. And here you are saying, well, no, not necessarily, that's not what this means. It's like, let's look at the adding in and the good things, and it sounds like some small changes, and definitely that stress management with it.
Yes.
Yeah. So, all right. So you've already talked a little bit about some of the things that, have you've helped people change with. But if you were to, list off maybe some of the top things that have really been helpful, as far as maybe you think of adding in some good things. So, what are some of those top tips that you've been able to help people with, maybe mindset shifts or things that they've added in to help them on their journey with prediabetes to improve their health? What would those things be?
Yes. Well, just from the CDC, they just want people, for example, to adjust the diet and do movement. Although,
Right.
just throughout all of this, what I know, experience, and also support people with is just bringing in additional things that work well for somebody for improving mental thoughts, feelings, and so on. So there are other things, sometimes movement, for example, works well to feel more energized, later
Mm.
feeling more relaxed, and so on. And there's also always many other things that can be done. Just what works well for someone to be feeling better. And that's a very helpful way to bring that in and incorporate it, to be feeling better and then being able to advance towards a goal for, say, reducing the blood sugar levels, stop having prediabetes, and then not receiving type 2 diabetes.
Yeah, so it sounds like really focusing on that mindset of what is going to make you feel better. Really, I feel like it's kind of a big snowball. So, what is going to make you feel better? What is going to help you with that mindset so that you can continue making some other changes? Because there might be some hard changes, but we're not necessarily going to start with those. We're going to start with that mindset and what is just going to make you feel better. Maybe some gentle moving, not going to the gym every day, but just some movement that will make you feel better. And it sounds like a very customized approach that even though it might look different for different people, that's okay because it's still going to work. It's still what is feeling good for you, what is moving for you that's just maybe a little bit better than what you're doing now, right? So kind of those small steps, how can we move you just a little bit? And then from there, moving it a little bit more and a little bit more so that, you improve your health. And like you said, yes, so we are going to try to help you not get that type 2 diabetes, which it is possible. Just because you have prediabetes doesn't mean that you are bound to get type 2 diabetes, right? There are things that you can do, lifestyle changes, food, movement, mental stress, all these things that can at least prolong, but if not even not let you ever get that type 2 diabetes. Like there are things that you can do.
Yes. Well, and yeah, just very helpful with what you shared there, Brigett. Also too, just being able to, another way to describe that is initiating small steps.
Yes.
Sometimes, yeah, so that can be referred to as baby steps.
Right.
Right. And well, just something else I like to share is that a small step or a baby step is an active form of steps. And another view, for example, when looking at a door, there's very small hinges on the door.
Mm-hmm.
So can view those as small steps. And once those are there, open the door, and there's a very big space
That's a
and able
great
to,
illustration.
yeah, and able to achieve the goal then of, say, going into a house or being able to go out of the house to go do whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. So yeah, so small steps, baby steps, just like those hinges are very small, but hey, they are steps. And I love that because if you try to make those steps too big, then you get overwhelmed and you either don't start or you do, but you get so overwhelmed that you can't continue on. But when we make those steps small to where you're constantly, reaching those next steps, then you're moving, right? And that's the point is just movement toward that goal. So yeah, that's awesome.
Yes.
Absolutely. Well, is there anything else that you would like to add in any last tips or anything else that you would like to share on this topic, Brian?
Oh, yes. Well, just with every or any little health situation that would like to be improved, changed, moved into a healthy lifestyle, there, are just different possibilities to do that. So, for example, it can be bringing in, say, it could be called fitness. It can also be called movement, whatever words work well for somebody. And then also being able to adapt and add something healthy in the eating style, as well as then just seeing what works well for being able to relax, calm the mind. There are many different possibilities there. So, yeah, through health and wellness, that can also then start to improve sleep. And it's also possible to start with sleep to see what would be helpful to start adding into the sleep process
Mhm.
to then sleeping well then feeling energized when getting up in the morning. And that could be then for starting some movement, going to work, supporting family, whatever. So always just different things that can be worked on and just seeing well what works well to begin with.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. It's very customizable, it sounds like, depending on where someone is, what sounds good to them, whether that be exercise or movement, that adding in thought instead of trying to think of always removing or what I can't do, but that adding in. And then, yes, definitely that stress management of reminding yourself to have some calm, have some relaxation, and then with sleep to restore. And goodness, that could be a whole nother podcast episode, probably needs to be, of just how much stress and sleep can definitely affect, and they do affect, but can improve even things like prediabetes, just that restoration, that calming, and being able to kind of reset your body so that you have that energy, like you said, and that motivation to move forward. And then so many other things that we could get into. Like I said, that needs to be a whole other podcast episode. But yes, so many things. And it sounds like, though, that with what you do in coaching, that if you have that prediabetes, have been diagnosed with that, there are so many things that you can do. It is not a kind of nail in the coffin that you're going to get diabetes. There is a lot of different things that you can do that is customizable, that is individual for where your lifestyle is, that you can add in those really small steps that can make a huge impact on your health and can get you out of that prediabetes zone so that you are maybe even more healthy than you have ever been or have been in a long time.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Brian, it was so good to have you on the show today. So thank you so much for being here. I greatly appreciate it. Tell all of our listeners, if they wanted to reach out to you to find out more about maybe prediabetes information or maybe even some coaching on that, where can they find you?
Oh, yes. Well, just one thing that's working well recently is just through Instagram.
Okay,
And then, we can start a call, a Zoom meeting, for example, whatever, do some texting.
awesome.
Just starting to see, you know, it also begins with just knowing where someone is at and then what will be well to start working on.
Yeah, absolutely. So Instagram, the best place to reach you right now. And tell us, what is your handle? Is it just your name on Instagram?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. And if you have any more questions, you can also find all the information in the show notes for today's show. You will find links also there to Brian and to Experience Calm Coaching as well. I hope everyone enjoyed this episode and learned a little bit more. Hopefully, you are a little bit encouraged. If you have someone that you know and love that has been diagnosed with prediabetes, to know there is a lot that can be done, a lot of simple, small steps to improve your health. And as always, that is your grit and grace for the journey today. We hope to see you next time on Experience Calm Cast.